This is Chris with Red Cedar Insurance Agency, and we specialize in helping crane and rigging contractors to protect their businesses. We understand the unique needs of the crane and rigging industry, whether that's coverage such as rigger's liability and making sure that goes up all the way through your excess layers, or helping you value and get the right limit on bailment coverage to help you cover your clients' products while they're being shipped, moved, on the hook, or in your warehouse. Past just helping and understanding those unique coverages, we help with risk management, such as understanding eligibility for your OSIPs and working directly with the OSIP providers to make sure there's not exclusions that put you at a disadvantage, as well as making sure we don't provide completed operations coverage on your certificates of insurance so you don't get pulled into additional unnecessary lawsuits. Red Cedar Insurance Agency provides value-added services that help your insurance be stress-free. That includes free physical policies that get delivered to your office, as well as free safety programs, free HR compliance posters for each location. We can help audit your current HR program and manual, as well as provide free online webinars for safety, sexual harassment, and HR training. We provide vehicle ID kits that go in your glove box to help your employees if they're in a claim. In order to make sure that our crane and rigging clients get the best possible deal, we work with all of the major carriers, captives, and programs that can compete on your insurance pricing. We relentlessly negotiate, and we let our clients see those negotiations by CCing them on the emails. They don't have to second guess whether they're getting the best deals. Helping crane clients and other high-risk clients understand mathematically whether they're eligible for captives or not is extremely important. The last thing that you want to do is become the insurance carrier for your business and as a result have that impact your business in a negative way. We think it's important to instead start off with a study to make sure the insured's losses are predictable enough that they'll really benefit from a captive. Nobody likes the dreaded last-minute insurance renewal. We start our renewal process 120 days before your policy expires. We propose on our accounts 10 days out so that you can bind your renewal and have time to carefully consider your options, but still get the certificates out to keep your projects going. Red Cedar Insurance Agency understands that claims can be frustrating for your business and impactful to your insurance costs. We follow up on all open claims quarterly. Claims that are over $100,000 we follow up with monthly. We understand that you have a lot of options when it comes to selecting your next risk manager for your crane company. And I want you to know that we're going to go above and beyond to make sure you have the right coverage at the right price and insurance is out of sight, out of mind, so you can focus on operating your company smoothly and not sweating all the insurance concerns.
Hi, this is Chris with Red Cedar Insurance Agency, and today I'm going to talk to you about managing your subcontractor risk so that you can make sure you properly transfer the risk to the subcontractors. We're going to transfer risk to subcontractors by using a subcontract, an insurance certificate, and then a number of endorsements. That, in conjunction with the indemnity agreement in the signed subcontract, will help you make sure that your subcontractors cover any claims that they may cause. Ideally, your insurance doesn't have to cover subcontractor claims. However, in the absence of a signed subcontract agreement, the certificates and these endorsements, more often than not, your insurance is going to end up pitching in for losses. Let's start to go into this a little bit now. I prepared a subcontractor risk management plan that's free for any prospect to use. And I'm going to go ahead and email that over to you along with this case studies that we're going to go over today to help you out when you're looking at whether a subcontractor is giving you the right insurance or not. In here, you'll see that there are several components and sections to working with subcontractors to mitigate risk. Part of that is just pre-qualification and bidding and making sure that they're a sub that's going to do quality work, treats their employees well, and is operating safely. Proper license, proper insurance, W-9 forms, and creating a file for that subcontractor that you have are some of those important things. Later, if we face a lawsuit together from that subcontractor's work, we're going to go and reference that subcontractor file and pull those documents to help us transfer the risk. We're going to go through how to transfer the risk with insurance, as well as some case studies that give examples of that. And then additionally, in this plan that you'll see are coordinating safety and inspecting the work of subcontractors, depending on who you're going to be hiring. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the insurance component of this document, and we're going to talk about transferring risk via insurance. A lot of people don't realize that that certificate of insurance and all those little check boxes and forms that we're trying to get, the main goal of all those things is that when a claim comes in, you're able to directly tender that to a subcontractor's insurance policy, and that policy cannot sue you back, and that policy covers you all the way until their limits are exhausted. Or, in other words, you are a blanket additional insured or an additional insured, and you have rights to use their insurance policy as if it was your own. You have a waiver of subrogation. Their insurance can't sue you back, even if you were partly at fault, and you're primary and non contributory, which means that their insurance is going to pay first and your insurance doesn't kick in until it's exhausted. If we do all those things and we have a signed subcontract and the right endorsements, more often than not, your insurance won't pay out anything for claims that are caused by those subcontractors. I have a few topics I'd like to speak about because I think it's important to kind of understand what's going on with these insurance certificates and some of the intricacies of that. And hopefully, I'm speaking to people in the organization that are getting certificates from subcontractors on a fairly regular basis. And that way, they can kind of learn when they're looking at them to identify key areas where those certificates might not be the right thing, or where maybe we'd expect them to be different than other certificates of insurance. So the first thing is going to be, where do the limits come from? The limits come from your subcontract that you provide them. It should have insurance requirements in there, along with an exhibit that shows them a sample certificate so they know what they should be getting from their insurance agent. And that's a key to being able to quickly get those from those insurance agents and make sure that they're compliant. When you receive them, then you can match them up to that sample certificate and make sure they have all the same check boxes. The limits, though, are concerning. Here's why. Most of the contracts that you sign for general contractors or the master agreements will have different limits based on the project owner. Hey, if you go do work for eBay, they're going to need 5 million. But if you do work for Swinnerton Olson, maybe they need 10 million. If you do work for Google, maybe they'll take 2 million. Okay. So when that happens, the vast majority of time in your contract with that general contractor or project owner, it says that you understand and acknowledge and will get the same limits and levels of insurance and endorsements that you're providing them also from that subcontractor. Okay. You can always just get the same limits from your subs and not change it project by project. It's definitely tons less work to do that, but you may actually run into situations where during litigation they figure out you breached contract because you didn't get the same insurance limits from those subs. Large companies or large general contractors or people that have larger departments working on subcontractor compliance, okay, are going to change it by project. And that's why they do these master agreements and then a separate one for each project with separate insurance requirements. The next thing is, when we look at that certificate of insurance, is everything up to date right now, meaning nothing is expired and it's all in force? And do I have a plan to receive certs every time they renew? It's great we got a cert for this project. It's a year-long project. Their work comp expires in 4 months. When their work comp expires, I need to be following up then to go get that new certificate of insurance. I think that like Procore and QuickBooks and some of those softwares will allow contractors to track that and follow up and maybe even automate some of the follow up. But it's important that you understand you got to get a cert every time one of those policies expire. And some clients are going to have 4 or 5 different effective dates. Do the limits and check boxes align? We'll show that on a couple case studies to make it easier. What about carrier ratings? Okay. Generally, people aren't super worried about carrier ratings. However, if you see some very small or obscure looking carriers, that might be something that you want to look at. And you can use the site ambest.com and get a free subscription, and you can look up the carrier ratings of your subs insurance carriers. Noting that the state fund is not a rated insurance carrier and everybody generally still accepts them, and that also you may run into captive programs that don't have a rating because they're a captive program, as you look through those for your subcontractors. Are there any concerning carriers that require further investigation? If you haven't heard of the carriers and you look them up on AM Best, it's going to give you a financial stability rating, which is ABC. C is basically you're going to go bankrupt. B is you got longer, but you're still going to go bankrupt. And A is what we're looking for. A minus is okay, but barely. A minus negative is really pretty concerning because those carriers spiral out of control really quickly if they get downgraded any further. So on average, we want to see an A carrier. They're also going to give you a financial size rating. And those are Roman numerals, but it'll say next to it their total annual premium volume. Very small insurance carriers, you might see 50 million or 250 million. And if that carrier is also like a poor rating, hey, they're not that large and stable overall. The other thing that we want to look for there is Lloyd's of London. And people have a generally positive opinion of Lloyd's of London. They do a good job ensuring unique things, and they customize their policy forms very heavily. What that means is that if you see a Lloyd's policy, more often than not, it'd be good to send it to your insurance agent to check out to see if there's any exclusions or forms that are concerning for the work that they're doing for you, such as covering theft of cargo, but not covering voluntarily parting ways with cargo, which actually happened during a claim, and I can give a little bit of an explanation of. Um, and then we want to think about what is the person doing that I'm hiring them to do? Are they buying, transporting, or storing project materials? Not your equipment. That's a little different. I'm going to need cargo insurance if they're moving your equipment. Okay. But for some job sites, are they warehousing or storing materials for that on behalf of your clients, which is a bailment coverage? And if they're installing any materials, it would be an installation floater insurance policy. So depending on what that subcontractor is doing for you, you might need some different insurance coverages. If they were doing consulting or engineering, you'd need professional liability insurance, for example. We don't want to see any policies with defense outside limits. On average, lawsuits legal costs are like 1/3 of settlement. So if $1 million settlement, you might have 200 or 300 grand in legal fees. We don't want that to eat away at the amount available for settlement. We don't want to see any prior work exclusions. And if you have the subcontractor doing any of these things, then you need unique coverage for them, and your subcontract should reflect that. If they're transporting your equipment, you're going to need to get cargo insurance. If they're storing any of your equipment or any of the client's goods or products, they're going to need some sort of a bailment coverage there. If they're doing environmental related work, they're going to need pollution liability. If they're doing construction management, engineering, or design, you're going to need to get professional liability, aka E&O. If you've hired another crane company to do work, we're going to do a case study on that today. But you'll see that you need to get rigger's liability is something that's fairly important there. If they're doing scaffolding, we would commonly suggest you get higher limits from them for the job site. And if they're doing demolition work, we would probably do a full policy review most of the time because of the exclusions there. I'm going to go in now to one of the case studies. And so specifically what's happened here is one of my clients has hired a heavy haul company to move one of their cranes on a flatbed truck. And so they're getting a certificate of insurance from them. And I'm going to show you some of the key things that we're looking for here. So we have our different insurance carriers. Oh, I see Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London is providing this cargo insurance policy. It has $1 million limit. Is the $1 million limit enough for you? In your subcontract, I recommend putting at least $1 million there because of the nature of the industry. But you might have cranes or equipment that are 1.2 or 1.5, and you'd want to get that higher limit to make sure they have the coverage for that. Is that crane also covered on your inland marine? Yes. What's going to happen to your inland marine insurance price if you file a $1.4 million crane claim because they flipped it over on a freeway or something? Your insurance is going to go up tremendously over a several year span. It's the hauler's fault. Their insurance should be going up and covering that sort of a claim. So we want to make sure we've got cargo insurance for them. It may say property in transit. There's a few different ways to say it. It may say over the road cargo or worldwide cargo. Um, with a transportation company, you're not going to have a general aggregate that is per project or location. So these boxes don't need to be checked. And that's way different than if you're hiring another crane company. On all of them, though, you're going to see a yes on additional insured for general liability and a yes on waiver. And then same thing with the umbrella insurance or excess insurance. Okay. The reason why is this, and you may have transportation companies complain about this. Why do I need GL? I don't need GL, any of those kinds of things. When they're strapping down that equipment and when they're loading and unloading that equipment, especially if they're using mobile equipment such as forklifts or any of that kind of stuff, that exposure is not covered by auto insurance. It's covered by GL insurance. They're not operating the vehicle at that point. Okay. So we've got to get GL insurance from them for those sorts of scenarios. And we're going to have obviously auto insurance. Yes, for additional insured. Yes, for waiver of subrogation. I've hired them to haul. Okay. I got my crane on the back of this extra heavy truck. It has my logo on it. It also heavy haul transports logos on the semi. They get in a serious accident. They hit 20 vehicles. Who's going to get sued? We're both going to get sued. Both our logos are on this stuff. Okay. They're at fault. It's their auto insurance. I need their auto insurance to make me additional insured. If anybody tries to sue me, I'm sending it to their auto insurance carrier. I've got this certificate and that additional insured, and then the corresponding endorsements and forms to be able to do that. Now, do you need 5 million umbrella for them? Not necessarily. I think even like $1 million or $2 million umbrella limit there for a transport company is probably okay, we got to keep in mind that that's going over this auto insurance though. So can we have a $3 million claim or a $4 million claim there? And we really can, especially if we're hauling heavier stuff. So maybe at least minimum 2 million umbrella going over the auto so that they have a total of 3 million for these auto claims that may come up. Everybody's got to have work comp. I want a waiver of subrogation. If they're hauling my load and there's a serious injury and their employee, the driver, is injured, I don't want him to try and sue me for any reason and come back to me. And if he does, I've got a waiver of subrogation on work comp. I'm going to send it back over to them. We already talked about the cargo insurance. This wording here is important, okay? All this wording reflects these little check boxes here, these additional insureds and waivers of subrogation, okay? And creates a list basically of forms that are going to have to be included with this endorsement or with this certificate of insurance. So when you get the cert from this transport company, it should include the cert and also about 7 pages of additional documents. You're going to need to get an additional insured on GL auto and then a following form on excess. It doesn't have an additional insured. A lot of times it just says I follow what the GL does. If they're additional insured there, you're additional insured on excess insurance. So you have additional insureds, 2 additional insureds. You have a primary non-contributory on the general liability that you need to get. We've got 3 waivers, and we've got 1 following form that says, hey, our policy follows the form of the GL. So when you get this certificate, on average, you should be getting 7 or 8 pages of total documents there. It's good that you have this that says yes. It's good that all the wording is here. I think it's pretty clear. If you didn't have those endorsements, I think you could probably still submit to that carrier for coverage using this certificate of insurance rather than having to put it on your own insurance. Okay. But if you have those endorsements, and it's even stronger. keep in mind you have to have a signed subcontract or some signed contract that requires this insurance from them in order for that cert to be valid. If you don't have the signed subcontract, the certificate, and then all those endorsements, you're just weakening your defense and increasing the probability that your insurance pays claims that your subcontractors cause. The next case study, I hire another crane company to come in and do work. I don't have the particular crane available today out of my fleet, but another crane company does. So I'm going to hire them to come complete the work. They become my subcontractor. What I've found out now through working with numerous crane companies is that none of the ones that I've interviewed are getting certs from other crane companies, and it's kind of buddy buddy. If there's a $5 or $8 million lawsuit, you can bet it's not going to be buddy buddy. And if you don't have a certificate of insurance, the endorsements and the signed subcontract, at a minimum, your insurance is probably going to pitch in with that other crane companies until both of yours are exhausted. But again, they're causing that claim, they're doing the work. It could really penalize your insurance and your long-term insurance costs if we don't have this. So some differences. We've hired Maximum Crane and Hoist. Okay. It's not a transport company. It creates some differences with the insurance. First one that we're going to see, I'd like to have a per project aggregate. That greatly expands available limit if they've had any other claims or have any other claims during that policy year. And this is common in the construction and the crane industries. We always want to see a per project limit here. I still have all these yeses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeses. I should be counting 7 yeses almost every time. Okay. Yes, additional insured on GL and waiver. Yes, additional insured on auto and waiver. They're going to transport equipment to those job sites on your behalf. I need to make sure they got auto and that I'm additional insured on that. They're using employees to do that. I want to get the waiver of subrogation on the work comp. Here's some other differences. Project requirements. Okay. I've seen projects require $25+ million of insurance for crane entities, especially since the rigger's liability should go all the way up through those excess layers. If you're hiring another crane company, I'm going to ask that every single time you look at the limit required for that project and have them match that excess insurance. You should always have them provide you as much insurance as you're giving to that GC when you do the cert for that GC or project owner. I put 5 million here. Generally 5 million plus the 6 million per occurrence is like the lowest we'd want to get from a crane company. It can go up from there. So if you see in your project that you're hiring them for that you need 25 million, you should ask them for 25 million. Next thing, I don't have cargo down here. That company has cargo insurance, but rigger's liability is more important. I want them to show proof of rigger's liability. And there are some differences between the rigger's liability you get on a third party policy, like a property insurance policy, for example, than the rigger's liability that you're getting on the general liability insurance, which usually takes a lawsuit to activate. The rigger's liability that you can get separately on the property insurance will pay out a lot quicker. It's smaller limits. It's designed to really, replace product or physical things very quickly that because of rigging issues were damaged. And so we want to see some rigger's liability here, probably at least $1 million. Some notes down here. I have all this same stuff going on in the remarks box, but look at this. Should the project be listed? Should all California operations be listed? Okay. If you list them there, it doesn't mean anything. You're not really limiting this certificate just to that project. Insurance agents don't have the right to change how insurance policies work just by typing stuff in the remarks box. People unfortunately don't realize that. We get them asking us all the time, put all California operations. Okay, but it's all worldwide or according to the coverage territory operations now. So you're just restricting coverage potentially, although it's not even doing that because we can't change coverage with the remarks box. Putting the project name and address and number on there, it just makes it convenient to find them and for people to sort the certificates. We do it all the time. Doesn't cause any issues. I don't think that will limit the additional insured necessarily either, though. But you could still do that. Just so you know, I understand that this is a lot of work for a company to track all these subcontractor certificates and the insurance requirements. If you're not currently getting them from other crane companies when you use them on your projects, at a minimum, you should get at least one a year that doesn't say any project names or any all CA operations. It's just a generic one like you see here. Um, and with like 5 million umbrella, that you can have as like an always on file certificate for them as a subcontractor. Sometimes that would get signed under a master agreement. Hey, all the work that you do for us this year, let's get a certificate. Here's a master agreement. So there's a subcontract of some sorts there. That's the quickest band-aid and like the like easiest way to try to reduce this subcontractor risk, with the more proactive and a lot more effort way being tracking them for each project and getting different limits for each project. We're still going to need like 7 or so pages of support documents, additional insured on GL Auto, waiver of subrogation on GL Auto and work comp, a primary non-contributory endorsement. But if we get all those things and another crane company goes in on that project and causes a substantial claim, it should be that you're in good position to take that subcontractor file, this certificate of insurance, the signed subcontract, and go to their insurance carrier. Hey, a major claim gets caused. I'm going to Selective Way Insurance Company. I can have my agent help me, or I can find it online. And I'm going to say, hey, Selective, I have a really big claim. I'm an additional insured of Maxim Crane and Hoist. Policy number S2461845. I'd like you to defend me. I have an indemnity agreement with your client, a signed subcontract, and a cert with additional insured. I'd like to send everything over to you along with the lawsuit and be assured that I'm going to be protected under that policy. That's the goal with getting these certificates. If we don't do that, or we don't do it correctly, our insurance is going to end up paying out. Our insurance costs are going to increase because of that. So this is a good long-term cost control mechanism. I really appreciate your time today. I tried to keep this as brief as possible. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Chris at redcedaragency.com. Thanks.